What's going on, everybody? It's ShamefulPenguin here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be showing you guys my Archmage Storm brand Hierophant. This build can clear any part of the game. I've done Hollow Grandmasters, done Uber, Elder, Shaper. You can do any of the Guardian fights. I've done pretty much every content there is to do in this game, and it does it with ease. This build can do anything deathless as well. It's super easy because it's also Storm brand. It's kind of given that you can do it deathless because you kind of just plop your little Storm brands and run away and play safe. And for anyone that's like new to endgame content or is just learning it, I highly recommend this build because it's not punishing at all. You can kind of just leave your brands around and not worry about them, like focus on staying safe. We are low life to get that extra DPS. This build is not super budget friendly. Majority of my builds are budget friendly, but this build you can do on a budget. This current setup I have of my equipment is about 13x, so if you have about that you want to spend and do all content and Stormbrand sounds fun, recommend doing this build. But if you have around 3 to 4x that you don't mind spending, or 2 to 3, you can definitely do this build on more of a budget. Look at my forum, and I will, when I'm talking about the gear, I will talk about what things you can keep out that are expensive and how to save some money on some of the things. But if you're looking to all out do as much DPS as possible, I recommend trying to follow and buy the more expensive things because they really do pay off in the DPS. First, I wanted to talk about the premise of this build. It's Storm brand, of course, but most importantly, it's Archmage. Archmage support is a new support gem that came out in 3.10, and what it says is that the more important thing that it says is that supported skills have a base mana cost equal to 6% of unreserved mana. If that value is higher, supported skills gain added lightning damage to 130% of mana cost if mana cost is not higher than the maximum you could spend. So we gain a ton of added lightning damage equal to our mana cost, and we just abuse that. Basically we just get as much mana as possible, so when we cast, we spend, the more mana we spend, the more added DPS we're getting. So Archmage support, it gives us like 6% more unreserved mana cost, which is nice and all, but we really take advantage of this by using Fevered Minds, which says 50% increased mana cost, and we use a bunch of these just to make sure our mana cost is huge. So just for example, you guys can see that I have just like my regular cast, nothing special. My cast, I spend 4,823 at the time. You can do it so it's more or less, but I like it about half, a little more than half, because then you can cast 2 of them. So if you walk up to a boss with nothing, you can cast 2 of them pretty freely and you'll get maximum DPS already. So that's my reasoning. You can make it so you can spend almost all your mana on one cast. You'll do a lot more DPS per brand, and there's different ways of sustaining mana, getting back your mana. There's a couple of methods to do that. Notably, Arcane Surge will give you mana regeneration a little bit better. Cinder Swallow is our best way of getting our mana back quickly, as well as our energy shield back. But Cinder Swallow does cost around an X or 2x, so I do say that's a little less budget friendly, but I do highly recommend it. And yeah, and that's pretty much the overview of this build. Just get a huge amount of mana and then huge amount of spending for one cast just to do as much DPS as possible. That's basically the overview of this build, and I just wanted to get that clear on how this is different than a normal Storm brand. Oh, and one more thing, so we are not a crit build actually, we are a elemental overload build. So this build does not do crit damage, so we're not scaling crit multiplier or anything. My reasoning behind this is that if so I got the inspiration to do this build from Baylor Mage. He has a crit version which does a ton of DPS. It actually would do probably more sustained DPS than this build, but it has a lot less energy shield. So I decided that I would favor survivability over DPS, and we already have so much DPS on this build that we're really not missing out. And overall, I think it's a better build because we have more survivability than the crit version. But if you prefer crit, you can take a look at Baylor Mage's build. But as for this build, I think it's overall better. And yeah, next I'm going to be going over the gem links, what levels you're going to want them at, and why I chose them. I want to keep my builds kind of beginner friendly and explain the reasonings behind the gems so you guys know why you're using the gems and not just blindly following a build, so you guys can in the future make changes to the build and make your own build out of the knowledge you gain. So first of all, we use Stormbrand. That's the main premise of this build. You're going to want it to have 20 quality as well because that adds cast speed. I just happen to have a 21 and no quality on it. So I'm using that for now until I get lucky on a corruption or decide to buy one if I get unlucky. Archmage is the premise of this build. Highest damage dealing support gem we're going to have because we are scaling mana. If we weren't scaling mana, we wouldn't be using this. But the whole idea of the build is to have this skill gem be the main damage source, and it really does so much if we get a crazy amount of mana and crazy amount of mana spent. So we're going to use this. This is crazy good. I kind of already explained what it does, so I'm just going to leave it at that. The next two I would consider the third and fourth links you would prioritize are Conk Effect and Controlled Destruction. I have Awakened Controlled Destruction. You do not need this. You can use regular Controlled Destruction, but of course Awakened gems are always going to be stronger than the regulars. Controlled Destruction, we're using it because it's giving crazy spell damage, and it's gonna minus our crit chance, but we don't care because we're not crit. Also, Conk Effect also gives an insane amount of damage because it gives 54 more area damage, and if you read Stormbrand, the top part says AoE. That means we can do it scales with AoE damage, so we utilize that. The fifth link I would consider were to be chain support, but if you're bossing, I would use Lightning Pen. But fifth and sixth link would be chain support because when we cast Stormbrand, it ticks on the enemies, kind of like how Arc reacts, and it will chain to multiple enemies with chain support. And this will do a lot of DPS. Awakened chain support's of course better, but I didn't have it in my budget at the time, and I just stuck with this for now. For bossing, I would swap out chain for something like Elemental Focus or something like that, but for now chain support's just working out really well, and I really can still go deathless on Awakener level 8 with the chain support linked in, so it's no problem. And then Lightning Pen is our last link. This is really high DPS. This adds so much because we're scaling so much damage that that it just is more beneficial to add Lightning Pen after a while. Once you have enough DPS, it's just so much better to do, and yeah, we're doing that, and it gives us a lot of bonuses. Next, I'm going to be going over the auras, which is pretty important because we are low life. So we are using Discipline, Wrath, and Zealotry. Try to get yourself a Vol Discipline. Super helpful for scenarios when you're like dying or being dotted. You can just slam the Vol Discipline and you're safe because it will recharge. So yeah, Discipline, Wrath, Zealotry. Wrath gives us a lot of lightning damage, and Zealotry gives us spell damage and consecrated ground, but yeah, just like spell damage is basically why we're using it. Yeah, so I actually am using Discipline as an aura. If you look down below, I am using Zealotry, Wrath, Discipline all as my auras. I'm also using Clarity. I'll explain that in a sec, but I'm using all of them. A lot of people don't like to use Discipline because it gives you such a tiny life pool, but if you have a Prism Guardian as your shield, and then you have a level 20 blood magic support with Clarity, you can have it level 1 or level 2, maybe even level 3, but it doesn't matter. I just did level 2. Probably should do level 1. I probably accidentally clicked it, but yeah, those are my auras: is Clarity, Discipline, Wrath, Zealotry. And make sure you have a level 20 blood magic. Quality doesn't matter. Level 20 blood magic with your Clarity. lastly, Arcane Cloak was also just a single add-on. It's a good kind of buffer, and since we're scaling mana, it takes our mana and it makes it as a shield, and that's a good panic button. It's better than Molten Shell or cast when damage taken. It's only one skill, and it gives us such a huge shield that it just really is more beneficial than any other defense, and it's really good. So I recommend using this for more defense. Next, I'm going to go over, we have a little cast when damage taken setup. I know these are linked, but since cast when damage taken, since Flame Dash is a higher level, see, it requires level 70. Cast when damage taken can only use 38 or lower. So it's basically like I have Flame Dash linked to Second Wind, and then these two are linked. You can do that. You don't need a 4 link like this. So make sure you don't have Flame Dash on cast when damage taken. They're just linked because it just happened to be that way. Want to make sure that's clear to you guys. So basically, I have cast when damage taken Blade Blast. This makes it so our enemies are nerfed when they hit us. This is good for boss DPS because a nerve makes it so they can get shocked and stuff, so it adds DPS. This also, we have Flame Dash linked to Second Wind. That's pretty much it, just Second Wind. This gives us a 4th charge of Flame Dash. I believe at level 20 it does. I forget what level it gives you your 4th charge, but regardless, Second Wind's really good. Faster casting is also really good on Flame Dash, or you can straight up just use the skill Dash. I don't enjoy it as much as Flame Dash for whatever reason, but you can also use Dash in Second Wind. It's also a good option. But that's it for the helmet. The boots. So you can have your helmet and your boots. The gems can be whichever way you want them. They can be on whatever, but everything else has to be on the gloves, the weapons, the chest piece. But the boots, I have Empower, Second Wind, Brand Recall, Arcane Surge. This is because Brand Recall, we sustain our brand DPS. So when we summon a brand, right, we spend like a ton of mana, right? So these, since we spent a ton of mana, they're going to do a ton of damage. But when we walk around, they're not going to follow us until we Brand Recall. Brand Recall doesn't change the DPS these are going to do. It just brings the brands over here. So they're going to keep their huge DPS from the Archmage support if we recall them to us. So this is really good. So we're going to use Second Wind and Empower just to make it so Brand Recall, its recharge time is really quick. We want that because it makes mapping crazy smooth. Then we want Arcane Surge. I did it at level 10, so Arcane Surge procs every time. I think I can bring it up to a level 11 now because I have Empower now. But bring it up to, so if you read Arcane Surge, it says a total of 64 mana. So just read whatever your mana cost of Brand Recall is and set it to whatever the max would be, because you want Arcane Surge to proc every time you cast Brand Recall. So just make sure you have it leveled as that. Oh, and also Blade Blast and cast when damage taken, you want it level 1 because you want it to proc as much as possible. We don't benefit from leveling Blade Blast, so just keep it level 1 as well as cast when damage taken. And yeah, I already said Clarity level 1. And lastly, we want our gloves, and we want these Wave of Conviction on our gloves, so try to keep these on your gloves. We have Wave of Conviction, cast when curse on hit, and conductivity. This is gonna curse them, so we get more lightning damage against enemies, and shocks on cursed enemies have 20% duration. Cursed enemies have 14% chance to be shocked, so we just get more chances to shock, which is more DPS. And on top of that, we do Fizz to Lightning, because Wave of Conviction, what it does is whatever the highest damage we do on our Wave of Conviction, it will make the enemies exposed to that element. So Wave of Conviction naturally converts 25% to fire and 25% to lightning, and it does Fizz, so it's 50% Fizz, 25% fire, 25% lightning damage. So what we want to do is make sure our lightning damage is the highest. We don't naturally scale lightning damage on this build. We don't have increased lightning, we don't have added lightning, so we struggle to get that to guarantee because we're getting most of our lightning from our Archmage, and we don't have Archmage on our Wave of Conviction, so it would make no sense. It's not doing the damage. So we're actually going to use Physical to Lightning to guarantee that lightning is our highest DPS. And that way, since lightning is going to be our highest DPS due to Physical to Lightning, where they're always going to be exposed to lightning, which is more DPS. So it's really good for bossing. Before, I like to have it on I like to have Wave of Conviction like on an automatic cast, like on a wand with a cast trigger socketed gem, or something like a cast when damage taken. But it did not fit on this build, and we weren't guaranteeing the lightning exposure. So Wave of Conviction is a self-cast, unfortunately, but since we only use it with bossing, we just wait for the boss to spawn, we cast that, and we're walking around doing nothing anyways, so it's not the biggest deal in the end. And I actually kind of enjoy it on the self-cast now, because I can choose when things are going to be exposed, so I can do maximize my DPS a lot easier. Now I'm going to be going over the gearing portion of this build. So I'm going to be going over the weapons first. First of all, for a wand, you're going to want a rare wand. For a high budget version, you're going to want mana, cast speed, wrath or zealotry, increased aura effect, lightning pen. I believe the last two I would want were spell damage and non-chaos is extra, the spell damage, and non-chaos is extra chaos, or lightning damage is extra chaos would be really nice as well. That's a lot of added DPS. So those are the things you're going to want to focus on a rare gem, or on a rare wand. But if you are more budget and are looking for a cheaper wand, just look for high mana, because we get a lot of mana from our wand. So you're going to want a lot of mana, cast speed, and spell damage. Those are the three things you're going to want to focus on. You can do lightning damage instead of spell damage, but they're interchangeable, so it doesn't matter which one you focus on. As for the shield, you're going to want a Prism Guardian, because this allows us to have blood magic support with no extra mana multiplier on our aura gems. So this will allow us to socket all 3 aura gems as our life, because if we had a regular blood magic with these 3 auras, we would be much over our life reservation, so that would not work. So we're going to need Prism Guardian just to fix that. It also helps out with the plus socketed aura gems really helps, and the elemental res is really nice. The 12% and the 25% really nice to have, because we do struggle on maxing out our resistances. Next, we're going to go over body armor. We went with an Ivory Tower. Ivory Tower is better than Chevron's wrappings in this build, in this scenario, because other than we cannot be damaged by chaos damage, our chaos damage is taken from mana before life instead. And since our mana is really huge, we don't have to worry about chaos damage. But I would still try to get your chaos res in the positives if you can. You're going to want it somewhere around 0, as close as you can get to 0 if you're not reaching it, if not slightly above like mine. I would say if you're within minus 10% or above, you're fine if you have a big mana pool like 8,000 plus. But if you don't have a huge mana pool yet and you're thinking about using it, I would say increase your mana pool, which actually your amulet will actually help a lot. So I would suggest using Series Foible. You can also use the use the Presence of Chayula. This gives us minus 60 chaos res, so it makes it so our chaos res would be at 0. It also converts our maximum life to energy shield, so 20% would be what, like 270-ish energy shield added for us, which is okay. So I recommend using this if you're really struggling with getting chaos res on rings or belt. But if you can, I would suggest using a Series Foible. It's really good. Rings, Well, actually, I'm going to go over the other parts first because it's kind of hard to explain the rings. We went the gloves as Voidbringer because it gives us the mana cost of skills increased. This really helps with our DPS. You don't have to use this. It gives us a decent amount of energy shield. You can go with some other gloves, something like rare gloves with high ES and stuff, but you would lose out because of the mana cost of skills, but you would just use another Fevered Mind jewel to make up for that. But since we aren't utilizing the crit chance for spells anyways, but if you are going crit, these gloves are best in slot. So take that as you will, but I still enjoy them a lot because of the increased mana cost, and it allows me to use another jewel slot. For the boots, I went with Skyforth. These are the expensive version of the build. This is because stun threshold is now based on our mana instead of life. Before, when you'd get stunned, you were stunned for super long and you would die actually a decent amount. But now we don't. This also gives us -6% mana reserved, and it actually allows us to socket these 3 and then the clarity. Before, without the Skyforth, you would need to actually maybe need to put 1 point into this, into reduce mana reservation without the Skyforth if you're using rare boots like I was before. But if you have the currency, I would highly recommend using these. These help out and with making you not die a lot. It gives us mana, minus mana reserved, just a lot of stuff like that. It sucks it takes away our life regen, but it's well worth it. Now I'm going to explain the belt and the rings. So the belt and the rings basically are all the same, just mana, energy shield, res, mana, energy shield, res, mana, energy shield, res. That's all I looked for on these rings. I went with getting a little bit of strength and dex on them as well. This was because of the requirement to use chain support and the requirement to use what was the other one? Blood magic. So you're going to need to have 111 strength to use blood magic, and you're going to need 111 dex. So you're going to make sure you fit those requirements to be able to socket both of those gems that you need. And I needed a little help, so I got a little help on my rings and belt. If you're using rare boots or rare gloves as well, you can use you can get dex and strength on those as well, just to help out with it and get some resistance on those. But if you're doing my exact build, you're gonna really need to juice the resistance and yeah, basically the resistance on all 3 of these. Like if you look at the resistance, they're pretty good on most of them, and I still managed to get some energy shield and mana. Some of these are, this ring especially was pretty expensive, but I think it was worth it because it fit exactly what I was trying to do. So yeah, and also quality of resistance modifiers. The catalysts does help. It can put you over if you need that. So remember that is a thing you can use. Those catalysts are a little more expensive because you're going to need like 20 of them because if it's already a rare jewel. But yeah, keep in mind resistances are a little tight, so, and I get all of mine from my rings and my belt and a little bit from my shield, so remember that. Yeah, so I also, speaking of res, before I forget to mention it, I get a little res from my Abyss Jewel as well, and that's what puts me over and fixes my resistance. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the gear. My flasks, Aziris for damage, of course. This is a really high damage. You're gonna want to get a high elemental damage as extra chaos. Cinder Swallow helps out with our mana because and our energy shield. So when we kill an enemy, we get 1 to 3% energy shield, and we get 1 to 3% of our mana. So super helpful during mapping. And then the rest of the rare flasks, just freeze, bleed, and curse immune. Yeah, pretty much it. Sulfur flask, granite flask, quicksilver flask. You can change out the sulfur flask for a jade flask if you feel like it, but Generally, I usually do Quicksilver and Granite, and then the third one's kind of optional how you feel. Now I'm going to be going over the jewels. The jewels have their own little section because it's so important in this build. There's one on my belt. There's an Abyss jewel on my belt. Just know that. That's where I'm getting one of them. It's a decent jewel. Would upgrade it, but I do need lightning res, so I got that there. But the jewels I'm going to go over the cluster jewels last. First, I'm going to go over the regular jewels. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, like kind of in a line. We're using all 4 of these. All of them are fevered mine. This because, I mean, the spell damage is great, yeah, and I would want a higher roll on them, of course, but the increased mana cost of skills is where we're getting most of our DPS. That's why we make our Stormbrand cost so much, and since it costs so much, it now does a lot more DPS with the Archmage, so that's how we're scaling it. We're actually using 6 of them. I'm using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm using 6 fevered mines. If you're not using Voidbringers, you might need to use 7. You can test that out, but I like Voidbringer, so I'm going to keep it. Next, I'm going to go over, we're using Healthy Mind. This transfers life into mana at 200% of their value, so pretty worth. So we get these to be a lot more mana, and we turn these into mana. Super helpful. Recommend it having here. You can also have it here because it grabs these, and I actually think these are outside of the range. I think it just grabs these, so it's not as worth. But yeah, have it here. Super worth. You can have one here as well because it'll grab these, but you get the most bang for your buck when it's right here. Okay, that's it for the regular gems, I believe. Yeah, everything else is cluster for now. So we're using a large, and what you want is to have 8 passive skills. That way you can path straight to the 2 jewel sockets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, using only 5 passive. I socketed this because Overshock's pretty good. I'm gonna take these off. You do not have to socket the middle one, the middle notable. I would actually recommend taking it off. I'm gonna go over the path of building for them and show you why. But yeah, so brand loyalty, grand design, brand loyalty, grand design, brand loyalty, seeker runes. So those are the 3 I went with for now, and that's because brand loyalty gives us 5% increased damage for each brand attached, and we get brand attachment range, which is actually really nice. So we do that, and so if we have, I can have up to 7 brands out at one time, and when you cast brand recall, for that 1 tick it creates on the brand recall, it counts as it being attached to whatever enemy you're nearest to. So if you're on a boss and you cast all 7 of them and you attach them, you get that 5% per brand, which is 35%, and then we're doing that 3 times, so that's a lot of extra damage basically. That's the idea of it, but it doesn't do like a crazy amount of sustained DPS, but it's just kind of a thing that I started to do, and it's a good damage DPS increase because worst case scenario you have 2 attached to them, so that's 30% increased DPS and attachment range. And then grand design just gives us more, another brand attach frequency, range, and duration, so really nice to have. And as for, I went with a small cluster jewel. This is actually really nice because it adds Will Shaper 5% maximum mana as an extra energy shield. This helps us approach 9k when I'm at this little setup right here. This is what I have going for me right now. I put 1 extra slot into here. But I'm gonna change this soon once I level up, I believe, 2 more times. So I'm gonna show you guys my path of building. So if you guys downloaded the path of building down below, you're gonna notice that there's 3 different skill trees if you click down here. So this is the 1 cluster I was doing before. So you just do it like this. So it's basically like you don't have this side yet, you just kind of only have this, and it's 106 points. And then if you do, I call this the 1.5 because there's only 1 medium and a small jewel, and this is pretty much my current getup is a 1.5, and then I'm going to change onto this later on. once I get level like 98, 97, I forget which one it is. So we're going to have this, not going to socket over shock, but we're going to pretty much mirror each other on each side. So I'm going to get another one of these large and have it so it can do another brand loyalty, grand design, brand loyalty, secret rune. So we're going to have pretty much mirror these sides. And then we're just going to have like a regular jewel in here and a Watcher's Eye. This Watcher's Eye is actually super expensive. The gain maximum mana is extra energy shield while affected to clarity is around 30 exalts just for that one craft on it. So yeah, if you get another good one on it, it's going to be multiple yeah, it'll be so much currency. So I'm saving up for that at the moment because it really adds a lot of energy shield. It'll put us over 10k if we just have that. So if I click this on and off, puts us over 10k quite easily. So yeah, recommend using this Watcher's Eye if you can afford it. And this is the final get up. This is what my final build is going to look like once I get that Watcher's Eye and a few more passive points. So yeah, that's what I wanted to explain about the jewels. Pretty expensive for the 8 passive skills. So if you are looking for a more budget option, look for adds like 10 passive skills and just like make sure it has 2 jewel sockets first of all. And that's about it. You don't have to worry about the passive because getting the 8 passive skill jewel, 2 sockets and 3 notables is really expensive. I think it's like 2x-ish. So if you're more of a budget, you can probably get like a 10 passive skills, 2 jewel socket and 2 notables for probably like 10z. So go with that until you can afford something nicer. As well, actually, before I want to end on that, for cheaper medium cluster jewels, you're going to want a jewel socket on all of your medium jewels with brand loyalty, grand design, brand loyalty, secret runes. That's pretty much what you're going to want. And it's about 30c each. So it's not too crazy of a budget, and you're going to want as many of those as you can if you can, but don't worry if you don't have that. Try to do 2. It really does increase DPS, so I highly recommend using it. Now I'm going to be going over the passive tree. The passive tree is a little bit of a doozy here because many of you newer players are going to struggle a little bit on pathing this. This is because we are low life, and you cannot go low life, or you can, but you shouldn't go low life until you have the ivory tower. Once you get the ivory tower, then you can use low life, and then that's when you're going to be speccing into all the energy shield you can that's near you. But before then, we're going to be going a life build. So before then, I was going life. I had a lot of life on my shield, my helmet, my gloves, my boots. Actually, none on my boots, but you get the idea. I was using a life build before I got the ivory tower. I just wanted to show you guys this just to show that yeah, you have to do life build until you get ivory tower. So as you're leveling up, you're going to want to path a similar way, so you have to use less regrets. But as you're leveling up, you're going to grab some life that's near you. So I'm going to go over a rough direction you should go when you're leveling up. So when you're leveling up, grab Retribution real quick, free damage and cast speed. Grab Mind Over Matter, Elemental Overload, head over here and grab Rune Binder ASAP. This is pretty much doubles your DPS. And yeah, it's just free damage. If you don't have a setup and are low on life, like you don't have some preset, like if this is a league start, or you don't have some preset life items that you have, you can grab a Discipline and Training and grab Devotion and grab Purity of Flesh. These will help you level up your life so you don't get one shot. And if you're really struggling, you can grab Quick Recovery as well. So once you grab Rune Binder, there's a couple paths you can take. If you have Fevered Mind, grab this jewel socket and this jewel socket. And you're going to want to have 2 of them for the early game. This will increase your DPS a ton. Next, if you have cluster jewels, you're going to want to socket as many medium cluster jewels as you can. So if you have one, just put a medium cluster jewel here and then socket it. If you have two, then I would recommend socketing a large with two mediums. If you have more than that, then you're just going to have to wait, honestly. But yeah, you're going to want to socket your medium cluster jewels if you have them. If you don't worry. I didn't socket my medium cluster jewels until I was low life, and I leveled perfectly fine. So as you're leveling, so we're going to start from here now, because this is the furthest point we got, because we pretty much did this side of the tree. We ignored Arcane Capacitor and Faith and Steel, because those are we don't care about those yet. We don't care about our mana. We don't care about any of these mana nodes until we socket Arcane Surge or Archmage. Once you socket Archmage support, then you're gonna want to grab Arcane Capacitor, Arcane Will, Deep Thoughts, Healthy Mind. But before then, don't worry about it. So yeah, so we're still life. We're around level like 30-ish, 30-something-ish probably. Ignore Energy Shield, grab Life, Path on Through, grab Bulwark, Prodigal Perfection, Path on Down, Heart and Blood, Deep Wisdom. Ignore both of these. Path up here, a lot of traveling, honestly. And then around here, probably you're gonna have, probably before that actually, you're probably gonna have Arcane support or Archmage support. And once you get Archmage support, start socketing your mana, all the mana nodes you can. This is going to increase your DPS a ton. And if you get to a point where you feel like you can add another Fevered Mind, go ahead and add one right here or right here. But you're only going to need 3 until you're hit your second ascendancy. Third ascendancy. So now you're going to head on over. Written in Blood is pretty good, so you're going to path on over to that, grab here. Mind Drinker is actually super helpful. Recover 2% of mana on kill. So as you're mapping, you're getting a ton of your mana back because you have such a huge mana pool. Really important, recommend it. But ignore Ghost Reaver, Pain Attunement, and Arcane Vision because we are not low life. So once you've kind of spec'd all those out, you're getting closer and closer to 76, sorry. And once you hit 76, then you're going to want to regret your life nodes, start socketing them into other things that you're missing, and that's how you go on. There's a lot of nodes that are in cluster jewels, so you're going to want to pick up a few of them on the way, especially the medium. Pick up like 1 or 2 medium jewels, just so you have that bit of DPS just to use in the beginning. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the passive tree. A little difficult to path if you're new, but if you're experienced or have any experience with this game, it's not really a worry. And you guys, this will be a good learning experience on like pathing to different ways and learning like what's useful and what's not. So yeah, I recommend trying it out, and it's kind of like you use it and you go. You don't worry about it too much unless you notice that you're like dying a lot or something like that. But yeah, next I wanted to talk about the Ascendancy. So first point in Ascendancy goes to Sign of Purpose, so we can cast additional Brand. Brand Recall has recovery. Good damage. Some people, there's some differences that you can use on your Ascendancy. I've seen some other Archmage ideas go by, but this is what I like to do. Sign of Purpose first. Second is Divine Guidance. Gives us a lot of mana. Transfiguration of Mind gives us some mana. Maximum mana is applied as damage. Pretty good. Next, I like to go Sanctuary of Thought. Gain 20% maximum mana as extra energy shield. This gives us a ton of energy shield late game. Increased area of effect per 50 unreserved mana up to 100, so it gives us some area of effect, which is okay. We don't care about that as much. This is the only problem, is that 50% less mana cost of skills. That kind of hurts us, honestly. This hurts us because we want to spend more mana. The more mana we spend, the more damage we do. Now we're halving it. That's why we use 6 Fevered Minds, just to fight the fact that we have this less mana cost. So yeah, also we have 10% less mana reservation. This actually is super helpful because without that we wouldn't be able to spec all 3 auras. So this node is really worth it, and then you use a few more. Once you spec this, you're going to need to use like 1 or 2 more Fevered Minds than you already had just to regroup your DPS. And lastly, you're going to go Illuminated Devotion. Spell damage leech is nice, and yeah, spell damage while you have Arcane Surge, and we pretty much can guarantee ourselves always having Arcane Surge. So that's pretty much it for the Ascendancy. I've seen some people go into Arcane Blessing and take off some Sign of Purpose or take off Sanctuary of Thought, but I prefer this setup. It's a lot more safe because you get a lot more energy shield, especially from Sanctuary of Thought, so it's really worth it in my opinion. Next I will be going over the Pantheon choices. I went with Soul of Arcali. This is because it gives us 50% increased recovery rate of life and energy shield if you stop taking damage over time recently, and the 25% chaos resistance against damage over time. These help us out a lot on survivability if you're taking damage over time, especially if it's a dot. It's really annoying on energy shield builds because we can't recover, and it takes us longer to start recovering because we don't have that huge amount of regen on this build because of things like Skyforth taking away a lot of our regen. But this is super helpful. I recommend this one over the other major gods, but honestly Pantheons aren't like make or break, so if you can't get it, it's okay. Spec whatever one you feel most comfortable in. For the minor, I went with Poison Immune. This is because Poison was actually really annoying for me for a while, especially in one of the Elder fights. A lot of the fight was based off poison, and he would just constantly dot you, and I didn't have a Poison Immune flask, and my energy shield wouldn't recover a lot, so that fight was actually really annoying. But once I got this minor god immune to poison, that fight he does 0 damage, and it's super fun. So I believe this is worth it overall because there's a lot of sources of poison. There's a decent amount of bosses that do a lot of poison dot, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. Another good choice is the while stationary gain life regen per second. This is because our life regen is transferred into energy shield regen with one of our passive points, so we can get some nice regen if we're stationary. I dislike it. I dislike being stationary. I like moving around a lot, so I went with Poison Immune because I think it was more fun. But those were my choices on Pantheons. As for the Bandits, I went with Kill All. This is because we don't benefit from the crit multi that much, so the all resistance wasn't as beneficial as it would be in crit builds. And we can really use the points in Cluster Jewels instead, which is really a better way to spend your skill points. Next, I'm going to be going over the Anoints. So possible Anoints you can do, and the one I went with actually was Dreamer. This is because 25% maximum mana is really nice. That adds a decent amount of DPS, and I know you could path to it with a few steps, but I felt like our passive points are really crammed in this build, and I would rather spend them on Cluster Jewels than travel nodes. So yeah, another choice you can do is Utmost Intellect. This will give us a decent amount of energy shield and mana because it gives us intelligence. It's also a great choice, but I overall thought Dreamer was a better choice just purely because 25% increased max mana was better than the, like, I think it was like 10%, or no, it gives you flat mana, which wasn't as beneficial because we have a lot of flat mana from things like our wand on our jewels already. So it was more beneficial to get percent mana over flat mana because If you don't know, if you hover over intelligence, every 2 intelligence gives us 1 flat mana and 5% increased energy shield. So Utmost Intellect give us more energy shield but less mana. So you take that as you will. You have the freedom to do either one. There's no mandatory to do it, but Dreamer is actually really cheap to anoint as well, so that's the one I went for. And that's pretty much all I had to say for this video. I'm sorry this build is so freaking crazy long. I try to make these builds shorter, but then once I start recording I realize I want to just talk about the build. I want to talk about and explain every little detail, so you guys have a better understanding. I know a lot of you guys still ask questions, and I welcome that. I want you guys to ask as many questions as you want. Leave them down in this video. If you have questions on Stormbrand or whatever video I make, you have questions on, leave it down below. I will answer them on YouTube. I'm not that good at answering on the forum because there's no like notification that pops up, and I don't check it daily, but I check YouTube daily. So leave me a comment down below if you have any questions. I will answer it the best of my ability. I'll talk to you about it, and I just want you guys to understand the build and get better at this game so you guys can truly enjoy it like I do. So that's pretty much it for the build. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys try out this build. It's a lot of damage, a lot of easy boss killing, a lot of easy I don't know how else to sell this. It's a great build, and yeah, if you guys enjoyed it, please leave a like, and I appreciate you guys sticking around for the entirety of this video. I really appreciate you guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I will see you guys in the next build video. Bye.